all that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the TV. Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead, and were trapped by a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look, but when she realized they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them again and immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Only Kenan had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd be able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how it couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Every now and then, I was gonna say then, but then changed it to again mid-sentence. Every now and again. Every now and then, his muttering produced a question directed at Nanjo. But the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived, they wouldn't learn anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was a deathly pale. Maybe that atmosphere was why she tried to rise to the challenge and take charge. Natsuhi appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude. She briskly gave directions.
私はお父様のところへ行ってきます。現時は急ぎ警察へ連絡を。
かしこまりました。
私も一緒させていただいていいかしら、夏日姉さん。クラウス兄さんがいなくなった以上、お父様の補佐は私の仕事だもの。その私が夏日姉さんに任せっきりで、ここでくつろいでいるわけにはいかないわ。
Natsuhi was struck speechless by Ava's aggressive move in a situation like this. She seemed to be claiming that with Klaus dead, the one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife. Huh. But herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Or maybe she hadn't been at all happy when Natsuhi took command without reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Ava's mind had been blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsuhi started giving orders.
お好きになさるといいでしょう。
Natsuhi started walking without saying a word more. Ava followed behind her. As they did, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. She usually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter. But because everyone was still stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her.
奥様
夏日姉さんならお父さんのところへ行ったで。すぐ戻ってくるやろ。どないしたんや、熊沢さん。
それが食堂に血が
The ears of everyone in the parlor twitched. Everyone thought the same thing. Hope I misheard that. Any container can only hold so much, and no one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. So they all thought it. I hope I misheard that.
なんやて食堂
朝食の準備に食堂に配膳に行ったら
The first one to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanjo to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumazawa to go pale. To those who had viewed that gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumazawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive. However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
ここにも血だまりがあるよ。これは一体。
だいぶ時間が経っているように見えますな。おそらく昨夜ここで殺されたんだと見ていいでしょう。
そういうことになるんやろな。わしらは昨夜ずっと食堂で話し合いをしとった。そしてここに何者かが押し入ったに違いない。
父さんたちが打ち合わせを抜けて休んだのは何時だっけ？
昨夜の24時を少し過ぎたくらいの頃や。だからその後にと考えるんが妥当やろな。
マジかよ。勘弁してくれよ。
Right. So that was the other thing that I believe I mentioned last part, where now that we have this going on, right? We had 5 people die, so 5 of the 18 residents are dead. And no one knows who did it. When they were going over who could have done it, they basically said either any one of us did it, any one of us killed all 5 of these people, or, sorry, all 6 of these people, or there is a 19th person here that, you know, none of us know about. Basically that a killer somehow got onto the island, and then, like, that's what happened. I did talk about, like, who I think would, if there was a 19th person, who I thought it would be, at the end of last stream. So if you are interested, I won't repeat it because it's, you know, this is going up on YouTube. I don't want to give, like, speculation for possible spoilers there, but it is at the end. It is in, like, the final, like, 10 minutes or so. When you see the ending screen, that's when I started talking about it. About possible characters that may or may not be even in the game, may not even be in this chapter, or may not even be in this visual novel. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so right now they're all trying to figure it out. So there either is a 19th person, or one of them did it. And now things are about to get really tense because imagine, I don't know, imagine they claim it was George's parents. That immediately divides them. That will immediately split the family into 2 camps. And that's really gonna, like, you know, not work out for them at all. Except for Kinzo. Kinzo's gonna be like, hell yeah, like, fight amongst each other.
お嬢様、しっかり。
俺はもうさっきの倉庫でこの世の地獄ってやつを拝んじまったから、今さらこのくらいじゃ答えねえぜ。
Really? Good for you.
私は頭がどうにかなっちまいそうだぜ。ここは食堂だぜ。私は毎日ここで食事をして、学校のことをぼやいたり、宿題のことをぼやいたり、親父に学校の成績の話をされたり、そういうところなんだぜ。 お嬢様、これ以上ここにいるのはよくありません。100万へ戻りましょう。
俺も同感さ。秀吉おじさん、この部屋は多分警察にとって重要な意味があると思います。俺たちが踏み荒らしちまうのはまずいんじゃないですか。
Battler proposed this in a slight firm voice. Along with Kanon, he grabbed the pale and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
バトラさんの言う通りですな。この部屋にこれ以上好んで居続けることはありますまい。
Nanjo spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not of this world, at least we'd been able to leave, to cut ourselves off from that place and run away. Everyone had shared in that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building on this estate. And as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. It was where all of the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we hadn't really been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy.
わしも同感や。この部屋には犯人の痕跡が残ってるかもわからんしな。素人のわしらがかき回すべきとちゃうで。はよ出るんや。はよはよ。
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Battler had said and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. Hey, wait a minute, Hideyoshi. That sounds like something someone who's guilty would want to do. Hey, let's all of you get out of here. And he's gonna sneak back in and he's gonna clean everything up. It's almost as if nothing happened. Just kidding. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. Now, that could be taken in two different ways. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. This is either Battler speaking in that moment, talking about that instance, or this could be future Battler talking about this as if it were a memory. If that makes sense. Because the way this story has been written, every now and again, like Battler has been referred to in the third person, he's referred to himself or he's been referred to in the first person. It's very interesting how it's written every now and again, because we do shift perspectives every now and again, where a character will say, well, I saw this, and it's not Battler, it's whomever we're following around at that moment. So the way they wrote this, the way we were then, could either be Battler now talking about how they're feeling in that very moment, or again Battler in the future reminiscing about this specific moment. So he could be recalling all this and telling it to someone, or I'm overthinking it. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out the dining hall. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Once in the dining hall, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
お、源氏さん、警察に連絡はつきましたか?
How much you want to bet? We know the phone lines were cut or down from the kitchen to the servants' quarters in the or either in the mansion or from the servants' quarters to the guest house. We know the lines were cut, or well, not cut, but down, quote unquote, possibly because of the storm. But they have an emergency phone that technically should work. But now we're about to learn.
それが申し訳ございません。 無線機の故障か、それ以外の理由によるものかわかりませんが。
なんや、警察に連絡がつかんのか。電話も無線もどっちもダメなんか。
申し訳ございません。月曜の朝に船が来ることになっていますので、その船の通信機を借りることができると思います。
この島には船はないんか。新島の警察署までちょっくら行ってくることはできんのか。
秀吉さん、この天気では無理だ。少なくとも台風が通り過ぎるまではどうにもなりません。
無理。
クラウス様のボートは今修理中で島にございません。ですので月曜の船を待つほかないかと。
If I'm not mistaken, because it's been a bit. Remember, I've been streaming this game for about 2 months now, just about. I believe this takes place. It was either on Thursday going into Friday and then the weekend, or it was Friday into Saturday, and right now it's Saturday morning. I might be wrong. I think they all met up on Friday. Like Friday morning, flew to the island, or flew to the dock, and then took the boat right to the island.
そんなアホな話があるか。6人も死んだんやで。そして電話も無線も通じず、船もない。
And the promise tomorrow.
台風が過ぎて船が来るまで、つまり明日の朝までわしらは警察にも連絡できず、この島におれっちゅうことなんか。
Okay, so it was Saturday into Sunday, and it's now Sunday morning.
ってことはつまり俺たちだけじゃなくおじさんたちを殺した犯人もこの島から出られず足止めってことだな。
そういうことになるね。みんなを殺した犯人はまだこの島にいる。
親父たちを殺した奴はこの島から逃げ出せずまだ潜んでやがるってことかよ。くそ見つけ出してやるぜ。警察になんか引き渡すもんか。私がこの手でやっつ先にしてやる。
Maria had finally realized that something odd was happening in the parlor. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt unhappy and neglected, since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about. What a portrait change. From her looking worried to her looking smug as fuck.
ジェシカお姉ちゃん、誰か死んじゃったの？
The way she spoke was completely calm, just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared on a television drama, as though it was someone else's problem. Jessica probably didn't like that. As though trying to say, "Can't you tell just by looking at me?" Overwhelmed with grief, she flared up at Maria.
死んじまったぜ。みんな私の親父もパトラの父さんと母さんも幸田さんもシャノンも、そしてマリアの母さんも。
よすんだジェシカちゃん、悲しいのは君だけじゃない。
マリアさん、ショックだろうが聞いてください。あなたのお母さんがな、死んでしまいました。
ママが死んじゃった？
ああ、誰かに殺されちまった。悲しいだろうがよ。心をしっかり。
な んじゃった？
6人だぜ！ 6人だ！くそくそくそ！あんな残酷なことしやがって！踊ってもんがあるだろうがよ！人間な誰だか知らねえが、犯人は人間じゃねえぜ！血の色が赤いわけがねえ！
犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ生贄なだけ。
I was mashing L to change the language, as if that's gonna do anything.
犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ
Nope, they
生
censored it here
贄
as
な
well.
だけ。
I wish I could hear her a little bit better.
うーん。
Because I don't know if she says it here. I'll try to, like, see if I can pick up anything. I'll crank up the audio on my end.
犯人は人間じゃない。
So, they're not human.
鍵が選んだ生贄なだけ。
No, I couldn't tell. Let's see. Let me lower the audio again. That kanji is the key? Well, let's see. This is the kanji for... Oh, well, it is. You're right. Yeah, Kagi is the key. Literally.
おい、マリア。今、なんて言った？
No, literally? Literally, Kagi is one of the is one of the asterisks? Okay. Maria had just said something, but since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. One sec. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Because, let's see, hold on. If we go here, we go to the tips, we go to this. Yes, so chosen by the key as sacrifices. Yes, 6 chosen by the key. Okay, so yeah, so that is one of the first, that is one of the first hints. Like this. So the culprit isn't human. It's just the chosen, or well, what would they be? Do they have a specific name? They're just named as chosen. I guess sacrifices. We can refer to them as sacrifices. So it could be something like the culprit isn't human. It's just the sacrifices chosen by the key. Yeah. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuhi's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuhi and Aunt Ava had returned from their trip to see grandfather.
無線でも連絡できない？こんな時に使えなくて、何のための防災無線ですか？
申し訳ございません。毎年、保守点検はさせているはずなのですが。
ほら、光をチカチカさせるみたいな船舶信号ってあるじゃない？そういうので向こうの島に連絡することはできないのかしら？
そのような設備はございません。
Plus, no one lives on the other islands.
申し訳ございません。
Okay. Just then, Kumazawa arrived pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to take it to the parlor.
なぜ朝食をこちらに？
ああ、夏日さん、それは後で話す。それよりエヴァ、お父さんはどうなんや？
ご一緒でないところを見ると、このような事態になっても部屋から出ませんか？
いないわ。部屋は空っぽだったのよ。
Eh? Yeah. Yeah, I assume they meant, like, victims. victims or sacrifices, like anything along those lines. It's people that are now gone, chosen by the king. He wasn't there and the room was empty. So, we know Kinzo has elaborate mechanisms just to even get into his fucking room. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have any other elaborate mechanisms to leave the room that he's in. For all we know, if you pull the knight's arm, like the left arm down, like one of his like bookshelves like flings open, or it pushes forward and then slides to the left, and then there's a secret wall he can go through. Or if you pull a book from the first bookshelf on the 15th column, or on the 5th column or row, or shelf again, you could you unlock another wall, or there's a trap door on the floor that opens up. Who knows? But anyway, that's more than likely what could possibly happen. Could have happened to him. But he's gone now.
なんやて？こんな時にどこ行ったんや？
親方様が書斎を出られたというのですか？
そうです。私も驚いています。いつの間に部屋を出たのやら。あなたたちに心当たりはないのですか？
So, one more very important thing to remember. Kinzo is also a participant in this death roulette. If you remember, I believe it was when he threw his ring out. He said something like, he told his family, like, koi, like, come get me, right? Because he's also playing this game. So, they all think, again, they're all still in this, hey, we're just hanging out at the family, island. And then, we'll leave on Monday. But they forget that a ritual has begun, and that their grandpa is also a contestant. Because he's got stake in this. He wants to see Beatrice again. That's his thing. He wants to revive Beatrice. And he wants to, I don't know what exactly he wants to do with her. As far as we know, he's going to die shortly after. Probably. He'll probably die after seeing her smile one more time. But they're all competing against him. So for all we know, he is hidden, or he is moving to find the gold or something. I'm not sure. Maybe he doesn't know where the gold is. Maybe he does. I'm not entirely sure. We'll see as the story goes on, but just keep it in the back of your head that Kinzo is also playing this game, technically. Natsuhi looked at Genji and Kanon as she said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the one-winged eagle knew of a place he might go. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room. As far as they know.
僕たちにも見当がつきません。
ご存知の通り、親方様はあの書斎の中に、お休みの場所からご不浄まで全てを設けさせました。親方様があの部屋をお出になることなど、よっぽどのことがない限り、考えられません。
He goes to his giant bathroom. He opens the hot water on the 5th sink. The Chamber of Secrets opens up. He goes downstairs, he fights a basilisk. That's probably where Kinzo's at right now. He's grabbing a sword from inside a serpent's mouth.
となると、なんや、そのよっぽどのことがあったって考えるのが自然だっちゅうことになるんか。
まだそうと決まったわけではありません。とにかく気まぐれな方ですから、現状をご存知なくお一人で散歩をされている可能性もあります。仮にそうだとしたら、一刻も早く現状をお知らせしてご指示を仰がねばなりません。そうね、考えたくはないけど、お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。
そのような不吉なことは考えたくもありません。
Whoa, 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 whoa. Repeat that?
そうね。考えたくはないけど、お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。
Just double check the spelling of this, in case I'm mistaken or mistaken. Did they use these characters? Yes, they did. Okay, so the way this was translated was, sorry, if we go back to English.
そうね。考えたくはないけど、お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。
There. So she said basically the same thing, but the way they translated it was a little bit different. Which, it could be taken as like, hey, something happened, probably something happened to him. But what she basically said was, although I don't want to think about it, it's possible he died, isn't it? And that's why she's even more upset. No one had seen Kinzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken and the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Apparently, the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. The tragedy had hit everyone so abruptly that they'd lost all their composure. Everyone felt a heavy silence. Everyone was impatient. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything. So some of them held their heads in their arms while others got irritated. Right now, no one could explain what was occurring on this island, Rokenjima. After that, we ate the breakfast Kumasawa-san had made, which felt dry and tasteless. Of course, this is right after something like that had happened. No one felt particularly hungry. However, we understood logically that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa, who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa had taken some unusual Western vegetables, ones that Goda had probably ordered for his ultra-elaborate meals, and cooked them in a Japanese style, which made them turn an unpleasant color. She turns to Battler. Now, Battler, is this broccoli? Or is this cauliflower? As to what Golda had been planning to cook with those ingredients, right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I'd be reminded of the way Golda died, and a sour taste would fill the inside of my mouth. Everyone pretended to eat for the time being, but of course no one made much progress. Then we began pooling our knowledge of our current situation. First off, 6 people, which included Uncle Klaus, my father, Kiria, Aunt Rosa, Golda, and Shannon, had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as brutally mutilated corpses. And yet, we still couldn't contact the police, since both the phones and the radio were unstable, or unusable. So, until the typhoon had passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, Grandfather, who might have hoped would be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, or who we might have hoped would have been able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, had disappeared some time ago. Golda hadn't made breakfast, so Grandfather's stomach must have been empty. And if he had just been taking a casual walk, we should have been able to hear him whining about how hungry he was by now. And despite that, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he'd gotten caught up in his crime. According to my aunts, on their way back from Kinzo's study, they'd searched for him, calling out on every floor, but were unable to find him. Considering the timing of it all, it's only reasonable to assume that this disappearance had something to do with the crime. Right, you know, he'd be a suspect too. We figured Dad and the rest were probably killed in the dining hall and then painstakingly moved to the storehouse. So maybe Grandfather had already been killed and dragged to some strange place which we simply hadn't discovered yet. No one actually said it out loud, but this theory seemed extremely convincing.
私たちはお屋敷の戸締まりを確認してきます。お父様も念入りに探さなければなりません。子供たちはこの部屋を出ないように。エヴァさんと秀吉さんは申し訳ありませんが、ここで子供たちと一緒にいてください。南條先生もお願いいたします。
わかりました。ここでお待ちしています。
Natsuhi followed the servants, Genji, Kumasawa, and Kanon out of the parlor. All that was left was Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the 4 of us children, a total of 7 people.
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよな。しかし、日曜日の午前中はろくな番組やっとらへんな。
Maria's gonna be like, nope, I'm watching Doraemon and you're all gonna sit your asses down or I'm gonna cry. Uncle Hideyoshi started acting cheerfully, trying to brighten up this gloomy atmosphere.
ろくな番組見る見る。
お、そうか。マリアちゃんはテレビ見るか。じゃ、おじさんと一緒に見ような。
Maria was the only one who joined in. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was it really normal for a 9-year-old girl like Maria to act so much like a very young child? I don't think that's what's going on. Realistically, assuming Maria is autistic, like literally, like actually, like, you know, mentally diagnosed or whatever, right? This is the 80s, so that wasn't really too much, like, that wasn't really a big thing. I don't know how big autism was in Japan, as in like an actual diagnosis. I know in the West it was, but it was like not recorded as often, if that makes sense. It wasn't much of a big, it wasn't much of a big thing until around the 2000s, like the early 2000s, that like it started to become a little bit more widely known, you know? So assuming Maria is like autistic or has a sort of mental condition along those lines, it could be that because her mom mistreated her the night before, she doesn't care or is happy that she's gone. Because in her mind, she saw her mother as a threat, right? She wanted she was trying to explain how, you know, her Rose was there, her mother wasn't understanding her mother slapped her and hit her over and over again and left her out in the rain instead of trying to help her find the Rose. So in her head, it could be, oh, well, I don't care, this person that was mean to me is now gone. Yay, you know? And the reality of like what this means hasn't hit her. No pun intended. Or an alternative would be, she knows Beatrice did this. She knows the death roulette is going on right now. And she knows that it doesn't matter, her mom will come back later. So for now, she can be dead, who cares? It's not a big deal. Everyone else's mood failed to improve. And they each sank absent-mindedly into their sofas.
兄貴、聞いていいか？
なんだい？
さっき倉庫で兄貴はシャノンちゃんの指輪の話、あれ送ったのは兄貴か？
George didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. There could be no clearer response.
よせよパトラ、少しは察しろよ。
悪いことを聞いたぜ。
そうさ。
I'm not laughing at his misfortune, it's just like, wow, Ryukishi really wrote this. Just to remind you that Battler's a fucking idiot. And he can't read the room sometimes.
僕だよ。彼女に昨べ求婚したんだ。その時指輪を渡した。明日になったらそれを好きな指にはめて返事としてくれって気ざったらしいことを言ってね。
And that ring had been on the finger of Shannon's left hand.
数年前からシャドウに相談を受けてたぜ。ジョージ兄さんのことでさ。
なんて言ってたのかな。
シャノンは嘘をつくのが下手だったからよ。ジョージ兄さんのことを言ってるのはすぐにバレバレでさ。自分は使用人の身分だけど親しくしてもいいのだろうかとか、男の人の好きそうなものは何かとか、どういう服を着たら喜ぶかとか、そんなことをいろいろとさ。なんつうのか、そのまあ焼けたぜ。
それが婚約指輪を渡されておしまいかよ。
価値観は人それぞれだけどよ、男から求婚されるってのは人生の到達点なんだと思うんだよ。だからきっと昨夜のシャノンは心の底から、いや生まれてから今までの中で一番幸せだったと思う。
George sighed deeply without raising his head. Or maybe tears had risen to his eyes.
シャノンは昨べゲストハウスの当番だったらしいんだ。でもシャノンは僕と一緒にゲストお屋敷に行ってしまった。
シャノンの気持ちを察しろよ。婚約指輪をもらえばどんなに予告されてたって普通は舞い上がっちまって頭は真っ白になっちまうぜ。
Right. Not only that, remember, Shannon was like, hey, I gotta get something, I'll be right back. And then she goes to Golda and is like, oh, hey, Genji sent me, do you need anything? He's like, yeah, I mean, I kinda gotta wait, just in case, you know, all the other adults need something like tea. I mean, it's almost time for tea. Why don't you go, but I need to check, like, if all the doors are locked and if all the windows are locked. And she's like, oh, well, do you want me to wait here? He's like, no, how about you go lock everything? And so she left. And the last things she saw, before we never saw her again, until, you know, at the storehouse, was a floating golden butterfly in the hallway.
気恥ずかしくて仕方なかったんだろうよ。
それでシャノンは当番でないはずのお屋敷へ行き、そこでゴーダさんの仕事を手伝い事件に巻き込まれてしまった。僕があの日あの場所で指輪なんか渡さなければシャノンはサヨは事件に巻き込まれなかったんだ。
兄貴、それだけは違うぜ。断じて違う。だからそれ以上泣くんじゃねえ。
バトラ君、そっとしてあげなさい。
Aunt Ava said that. After Aunt Ava said that, I stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually do more harm than good. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Aniki and Shannon's love since the beginning, and who had even discussed that relationship with Shannon, could comfort Aniki now. I went over to Aunt Ava and sat down in the opposite sofa.
バトラ君は強いわね。もうだいぶしっかりしているように見えるわよ。
まあほら、愛の深さが傷の深さじゃないっすか。俺は別にあんなクソ親父同士の方が知ったことじゃないし、桐江さんは気の毒ですが、まあ本当の親ってわけじゃないですしね。
あら、という割にはさっきすっごく大泣きしてたわよ。
What a bitch.
まあ育ての親に対する恩はあのくらい泣けば OK かと思いまして。
そのあたりの切り替えの速さやドライなあたりは本当にルドルフ譲りね。あの子は昔から激しく喜んだり悲しんだり怒ったりしたけれど、すぐにケロリと平静を取り戻したわ。
そんなことはないっすよ。俺だってまだまだ心のショックから立ち直れちゃいません。ただ俺がみんなと違うのは、それによってどういう感情が生み出されるかってことだと思います。
どういうこと？
I've been acting much calmer than George and Jessica. That wasn't because my sadness was any less intense or because I'd already recovered. My sadness was simply getting replaced gradually with a different emotion.
悲しいっていうよりは腹立たしいって気持ちなんすよ。どこのドイツがこんなことをしやがったのか。横っ面に一発お見舞いしてやらないことには腹の虫が収まらねえんです。
That was what I really wanted to do. I couldn't forgive myself if I just sat there, overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees.
親父たちが殺されて以降、この島は台風に包まれたままです。つまりこれだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎はまだこの
そういうことになるわね。今も暗い森のどこかに身を潜めているのかしら。
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Kiria the night before. That's right. After that letter from that person claiming to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table last night, we talked about whether or not a 19th person actually exists.
エヴァおばさん、この殺人、昨夜のベアトリーチェの手紙と何か関連があるんでしょうかね。
ああ、例の？さあ、どうかしらね。あの手紙はお父様が遺産問題に絡みたくて出した怪文書という見方で兄弟は一致したんだけれども、それと今朝の事件に関係があるかは今の段階では分かりかねるわね。
あの手紙、本当にベアトリーチェなんて魔女がマリアに渡したんすかね。
まさか全部お父様の仕組んだ茶番でしょ。シャノンちゃんあたりに肖像画のドレスを着させてマリアちゃんを騙したんでしょ。お父様らしい手の込みすぎたいたずらだと思うけど。
昨べキリエさんとベアトリーチェは実在するんだろうかって話をしたんですけど、キリエさんも俺たち18人の中にベアトリーチェがいるだろうと言ってましたね。
そんなの当然じゃない。この島には私たちしかいないのよ。なら私たちの中の誰かがベアトリーチェを語ったに決まってるじゃない。
この島には俺たち以外はいないすか。
当然でしょ。私たち以外の誰がここにいるっていうの？この島には私たちしかいない。18人しかいない。なら ベアトリーチェを語るのも18人の中の誰かしかいないじゃない。
Hidia denied the existence of a 19th person by spinning the chessboard around. Even though Aunt Ava hadn't constructed an argument that complicated, her opinion was at least the same. Except, if that's the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, the whole thing could be passed off as a prank, set up by someone or another. However, if we're assuming there's no 19th person, we can't ignore this anymore. In other words,
19人目がいないなら、親父たちを殺した犯人も18人の中にいるってことになっちまうじゃないですか。つまり今この屋敷にいる誰かが殺したってことになる。
yeah, the killer is one of us. So they're past the grieving stage, and now they're on, well, this very dangerous train of thought. Because the moment they start casting doubt on each other, well, fingers get pointed, and so on and so forth. Aunt Ava smiled meaningfully. It looked like she thought this conclusion should have been obvious from the very beginning. Yeah.
犯人は倉庫の中に6人の遺体を運び込んだわ。でもよく倉庫の中に運び込めたわよね。あのシャッターは常に閉められていて施錠されていたそうよ。つまり倉庫内に運び込むにはシャッターの施錠を開ける必要があった。わかる？
たまたまその日シャッターが開けっぱなしになってた可能性は？
No.
使用人たちは常に閉めていると言ってたわ。つまり鍵を使用人室から持ち出さなくては倉庫は絶対に開けられない。
So one thing she's heavily implying here is that a man did it. So, just in case, because I'm sure she's going to mention this now in a little bit. If we look at who's remaining, the only men that are around, also Kinzo is now grayed out. The only men that remain are Kinzo, Nanjo, Genji, Kanon, Battler, and George. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? Oh, 7. With their uncle, Hideyoshi. Which means a man must have done this and carried all... Because, I mean, I don't know if you've ever carried a person before. If you've ever had to in your life. But usually, you know, if you pick up a loved one, let's say, or even like your girlfriend or boyfriend or some shit, if you pick them up, usually they will do something like hold onto your neck and, you know, help you lessen the burden, right? I don't know if you've ever had to drag someone that's like asleep or try to lift someone that's asleep that isn't trying to lighten that burden. Suddenly their entire weight like comes into play and they feel a lot heavier. So imagine having to drag 5 corpses. And it's not like they were dragging 5 Marias around, right? They were dragging around sorry, Golda, Rosa, Rudolph, Kirie, and Klaus. So 3 grown men, 2 grown women, and a 17-year-old. So that's something to remember. Realistically speaking, I mean, it's not Kumasawa. I really don't think it was Kanon who did it. Genji more than likely not. And then Battler and George were both, you know, sleeping. So it would either be Hideyoshi, Nanjo, or, now that he's grayed out, let's see if anything happened. So, Ushinomiya Kinzo disappeared from his study unnoticed. Kinzo's study has everything from a bed to a toilet to a bathtub, so it's extremely rare for him to go outside. However, he does occasionally go out for a walk on a whim without telling anyone, and his disappearance invariably leads to a huge uproar throughout the house. He usually comes back as soon as he gets hungry. Usually. Now, could it have been Kinzo? I really doubt it. Even though Kinzo is a grown man, even though he's presumably tall, right? Because everyone in this family is tall. At least all the men born in the Yoshidomiya family are tall. He's also, like, dying. He's got magic cancer. So, whenever his time has come, he will die. He has shown, like, you know, some like, just unfounded vigor. Or some newly found vigor. But that's more for him to actually, like, remain and argue and yell at people. It's like a grandpa finding spite. Like, having spite motivate him to continue to yell at a child for stepping in his, like, in his grass or something. Or on his grass. But that's about it. So realistically, I really do not think any of them did this. Unless it really just was, of course, the biggest culprit of them all, or the biggest suspect, Maria. Just kidding. I really think Maria did it. For all we know, she did. For all we know, she got possessed. For all we know, she can do magic. Who knows?
鍵は使用人室の一つしかないんすかね。
源氏さんはそうだと言ってるわ。ということは、犯人はそのたった一つの倉庫の鍵のありかを知っていて持ち出した。さっきカノン君が使用人室に鍵を戻すところを見たわ。壁にびっしりと鍵がかけられていて、とても素人にはどこに何がかけてあるのかわからなかった。犯人はその中から倉庫の鍵を見事選び出したの。しかも札も何もついていない鍵を手にして、バラ庭園裏にある倉庫の鍵だと理解した。ついでに言うと、倉庫の場所すら理解していた。もっとはっきり断言するわ。
It was the help, Battler.
犯人は使用人室の内部にも熟知している。
Her argument was extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been found thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden, there wouldn't have been much to go on. However, if there was only one key to the storehouse in the servant room, and it was stored in such a large group, with such a large group of keys, a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant the culprit was someone who went into the servant's room a lot and was familiar with the locations of the keys. The family members didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that...
ってことは、使用人の誰かが犯人。
悪いけど、それ以上はおばさんも言えないわよ。でも、
なんすか？
犯人。犯人たちは複数で、そして十分な武装をしていたと考えられるわ。だってそうでしょ？食堂にいた兄さんたち4人を一度に襲って殺し、合計6人分の遺体をようようとバラ庭園の向こうの倉庫まで運んで、悪趣味な化粧と落書きを施している。
and arrange for that disgusting makeup and the graffiti on the shutter.
これだけのことを単独犯で行えるはずもないでしょう。
It made sense. It probably would have been possible for a single person with enough time, but it would take incredibly long. It was probably safe to assume that a significant number of people were involved. So of the 5 servants, 3 killed 2 of them. So again, you have to remember, like, just thinking about it from her perspective. And this is what, like, Ryukishi right now is doing what he does in presumably all his novels. So far, it's happened in Higurashi as well, where one of the characters thinks about who the fuck did this and why they would be motivated to do something like this, right? So Ryukishi wants you to think pretty hard about this. Even though he said, hey, don't think about it, just enjoy the ride for chapter 1. If we were to think about this, right, from the perspective of Aunt Ava, of course she would think, well, it's obviously not one of us. Like, you know, Natsuhi didn't do it, my husband didn't do it, you 4 kids didn't do it. So it has to be the help, right? Now, I can understand all of them wanting to kill Golda. But we know that Kanon, that Kanon is incredibly protective of his sister, right? There was no way he was going to let any of them kill her. He would have probably been like, I want to be a sacrifice. There's no way he would have let Kumasawa or Genji kill her, right? So realistically, if you think about it, it's none of them. But if you think about it again from Ava's perspective, it is fair to assume that it was one of them. Now, one thing I did, I mentioned this last stream, but just in case, I'll mention it again. You have to remember that the people that died are Golda, Shannon, Rosa, Rudolfu, Kirie, and Kaos. The only reason Shannon died, as far as I'm aware, or what I'm assuming happened, is because you, Natsuhi, had that anti-magic charm protecting her room, preventing anyone from going into it. Because remember, she spoke to Jessica the night before and was like, she's like, hey, you know what, Mom? Sorry for being such a bitch. Here, take this. It's supposed to protect you. Just put it in like your door, you know, like in the doorknob. And, you know, it should stop, like, evil magic from happening. And she probably did it, like, subconsciously, just in case. She's like, well, why not? Why not? You know, my daughter was nice enough to give me this. I'll give her my own charm. Which we found out was a mirror of some kind. And I assumed it might have been, like, a scrying mirror of some kind. Or a black mirror. Anyway, that's the only reason why Natsuhi probably didn't die. I'm pretty sure she was supposed to take the place of Shannon, and instead Shannon was killed, because then the following night, more than likely tonight, it would have been Shannon and George who are going to be taken out. Otherwise, the only 2 remaining lovers that remain are Ava and Hideyoshi. Now again, I try not to bring this up too much, mainly so as to not take you, the listener, you, the viewer, out of it. Because there's a good chance that, you know, if we just go through the novel as intended without me rambling about this shit, it would all just flow very seamlessly. But here I am breaking the tension. But I did say I was going to do this ever since, like, we got, like, into chapter 2 of Higurashi. I was like, alright, from now on, I'll be voicing my, or I think it was even mid-chapter 1. I was like, I'll be voicing my opinion from now on, instead of waiting until the end. So these are things to remember. Because again, the way it's being written right now, the way Ryukishi's writing all this shit, he's trying to make you think about who did it, and showing you why a person could have done it, or why someone couldn't have done it.
ってことは、エヴァおばさんは使用人の人たちがみんなグルだろって言ってんすか？
They were in codes.
静かになさいな。憶測で言っちゃ悪いわよ。それにもし本当にそうだったらどうするつもり？彼らは私たちを生かして返さないでしょうね。しかも兄さんたち4人をやすやすと殺した相手なのよ。今この部屋に残っていてまともに戦えそうな人間はうちの家族の3人にせいぜいバトラ君で4人ってところ。状況は昨晩と何も変わらない。つまり犯人にとって残る私たちを皆殺しにするなんて簡単なことなのよ。
I think she just said Mina Goroshi as well, which is not a callback to Higurashi no Nakokoro ni Mina Goroshi. It just means murder, like murdering a group of people. I've been playing detective with Aunt Ava, trying to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest before the police did. If only I could cleverly penetrate the culprit's identity and stick the proof in their face. I've been so sure that, just like in one of those detective movies, the culprit would then give up and surrender. However, the culprit would only surrender if there was no way for them to fight back. The culprits behind the crime on this island were far from helpless, and might even be able to massacre all of the remaining people here. And on top of that, this island was like a giant closed room, cut off from the outside world by the typhoon. So they had a full day, until tomorrow, to kill, scheme, and camouflage themselves. In short, it wasn't a safe atmosphere where we could get very far by playing detective. To the contrary, or on the contrary, we were at a stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits, and cause them to commit another mass murder.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。でも私は使用人の人たちをまだ信用できないわね。それに私は使用人だけを疑ってるわけじゃないわ。さらに黒幕がいるかもしれないと思ってるわよ。
Let me quickly check one thing.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。
Are these characters used at all? Just in case I misheard her. They are not. Okay. I thought she said Akuma. And she did say Akuma. But she did not say devil. Let me just check the other ones to be sure. You can see the kanji for darkness. But that might not be it. Just very quickly. I won't spend too much on this. Okay, no. So, she did not say, like devil or a variation of it. Like fiend or something. So let me just double check this. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. It was also to buy time for those watching the ad on Twitch as well. But I also wanted to satiate my curiosity.
使用人それにさらに黒幕。
黒幕？どうしてですか？
勘よ。使用人は書いて字のごとし。誰かに使用されて手足となる存在よ。殺されたのは後宮家の親族ばかり。ならその結果で利害が発生する人間が関わるのは当然。
This was also plain and clear. The Ushinomiya family had been right in the middle of discussions about how to distribute the inheritance when grandfather died. If this case followed the standard form of any classic mystery novel, this crime was definitely caused by someone with ties to the Ushinomiya family, and who was involved in the inheritance problem. Aunt Ava had probably read a few books about that, in that genre herself. Her argument may have had a few blind assumptions in it, but it was a standard conclusion that anyone might have reached. I think most people would end up suspecting the servants, even if they used different reasonings to get there. Especially the story about the key to the shutter. That made it very easy to suspect that one of the servants was involved. In other words, ding ding ding, if you guess the servants, you are wrong.
だから、なぜか気に入らねえんすよね。
Here we go.
気に入らないって？何の話？
It makes no sense, Aunt Ava. Sure, that might be your first assumption, but if you think about it a little bit more...
あ、いえいえ、 こっちの話っす。
Oh. I tried to dodge her question by joking, but I couldn't erase the sense of unease welling up inside me. After all, her conclusion was such an easy one to reach. A conclusion that anyone could reach. Other first-time readers reading Umineko were like, "Fuck, it's not the servants. Ah, game's calling me out." And I just couldn't be satisfied with that. If I tried spinning the chessboard around like I'd learned from Kiria-san, this is exactly why a servant couldn't possibly be the culprit. So let's go through that. If the servants really were the culprits, they wouldn't hide the bodies in a place connected to themselves. Why on earth would they use why would they use the Rose Garden shed if they were the ones in charge of the key that could unlock it? The police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. It was even possible that some other facts might come to light as a result. The more we think of the servants as the culprits, the less reason they had to carry the bodies into the storehouse. But what if they knew we'd think that and put the corpses in the storehouse for that very reason? No, that's completely impossible. Well, not really, but it doesn't make much sense for these people. When the police come and inspect the scene of the crime, they'll probably be able to uncover many things. No matter how carefully the culprits carried out that murder, some traces will definitely be found. In other words, they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. Right. And if Umineko has like the super feds that Higurashi had, then whoever the fuck they would send over would be like L from Death Note. Like the fucker would be inspecting every drop of blood, and then the second someone spoke, he would just turn to them and look at them. Be like, huh, what an oddly specific thing to say. Or something along those lines. Anyway, if you think about it this way and look at this murder game from the culprit's side, it's hard to imagine why they'd want to call attention to the corpses. Once the corpses were found, it could result in someone sending a report to the police, or it might make the remaining people more cautious, or it might make the survivors start to search for the culprit. None of these things would make life any easier for the culprit. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Shut the fuck up. Oh, come on. Come the fuck on, dude. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no Nakokoro ni. Every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Eliminating that beginning is essential for the perfect crime. Right now, we don't know where Grandfather is. We don't know if he's already become a victim, or if he's one of the culprits. But this state of confusion must be beneficial to the killer. The culprit has absolutely nothing to gain by showing us the bodies in such an obvious way, and making us all realize there had been a murder. In fact, this is the perfect place to spin the chessboard around. In other words, showing us the corpses in such a flashy way must be the culprit's goal in and of itself. So, at the very least, to the culprit, the appearance of the 6 corpses there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted this murder on display. To whom? To us. This is a message. The culprit is trying to shove something in our faces. I can't believe they're so dense about this. I don't know. I don't know what it is. G-Battler, I wonder. Yonder I wonder. What could it be? What could the 6 corpses be? What could it mean? You can just hear the hamster in his head spinning that wheel like off its fucking hinges. Like smoke is coming out of Battler's ears right now as he's trying to like have a Jimmy Neutron brain blast. He's like, oh, what could the 6 corpses be? Oh, what could it be? You know? At this point in time, this vulgar mass murder isn't making me feel anything except a malice directed towards all of us. Malice towards all of us. Is that it? Each one of the survivors has some kind of connection to one of the 6 victims. Uncle Klaus's death brought Jessica the grief of losing a family member. The deaths of Dad and Kirie brought me sorrow, while Aunt Rosa's death brought Maria sorrow. Well, that's debatable. Golda's death probably shocked his fellow servants, and Shannon's death brought grief both to George, who had proposed to her, and Cannon, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone now on this island has received an equal amount of sadness. Aunt Ava was sure that the servants were in cahoots. But then, how could you explain the deaths of Golda and Shannon? Exactly. At any rate, by this argument, the grief caused by the 6 deaths hit everyone but Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi. Now why would that be? Aunt Ava, who had directed suspicion at the servants and acted as though she herself was beyond suspicion, could not be ruled out as a suspect. In the first place, she was able to argue that the servants were suspicious by focusing on the shutter's key. But if you look at it, from a perspective of motive and who would gain, Aunt Ava's name rises to the top of the list.
バトラ君が何を考えてるか、おばさんわかる？
嫌だな。内緒にしててくださいよ。あんなことやこんなことで頭をいっぱいにしてたなんて。
私がこの殺人で一番得をする。どうせ疑われるだろうから、先に自己申告しておくわ。
I tried to dodge the issue by joking around, but apparently, it didn't work. Now, one quick thing to note. This is very important. I might be joking around, you know, of like, oh man, Battler's like so slow to figure all this shit out. Oh my god, I'm so smart, right? That's not the case. You have to remember that this is a Ryukishi novel. The conclusions that I'm reaching and that I'm voicing out loud, right? I'm like, oh, well look, Battler, of course 6 people died, blah, 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 blah. These are conclusions that Ryukishi wants you to reach. But just like with any work of literature, or well, I shouldn't say any, but with a good chunk of works of literature, this is technically a form of literature as a visual novel. There are levels to how deep something goes. I've talked about this numerous times throughout the Higurashi playthrough, throughout Shin Megami Tensei 5 and 3, and so on and so forth. But literature, of course, has many layers, right? You might have, I don't know, a story where, let's say someone dies, right? And the way the person dies was just by, I don't know, they lost someone they loved, so they hung themselves, right? So it's a story of suicide. On the surface, on the top layer, anyone can reach that conclusion. It's a story about suicide, the man killed himself. But then if you read it some more, and you read it again, and you look at some of the imagery, you look at some of the metaphors, you look at some of the way things were written, maybe that person didn't kill themselves. Maybe someone else did it, and framed them to look like it was a suicide. So layer 2, hey, it wasn't really a suicide, it was actually a murder. But then you go a layer deeper, and a layer deeper, and a layer deeper, and you start seeing other things come up. That's the same thing you should be considering while reading this novel. Ryukishi loves to throw red herrings at you. A lot of them. So, I'm willing to bet anything. We know who the killer is. We 100% know who the killer is. We've been exposed to the killer already. And we know who it is. But now it's up to us to figure it out as the story goes on. Because the average person would have probably thought, okay, yeah, it's probably the servants. Someone maybe a little bit more astute would have probably reached the conclusion of, oh, it's Aunt Ava. She's the one that has the most to gain. It could have been her and Uncle Hideyoshi. They killed all 6 of them and dragged them to the storehouse. Someone even more astute might think it's someone else. And someone even more astute than them might think it's neither of them. And Ryukishi's about to show you why all of those things are wrong. That's what we're currently at. Now, if I were to be a little serious about this, regarding this scenario, right? If we look at who it could have been, this is the most important. That first line is the most important. Or, well, the first of the rules. On the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. Right? The one who obtains the key must travel to the Golden Land, in accordance with these rules. The one who obtains the key, but the key also chooses, meaning that the key is sentient, or it's a person. Of the characters that exist, that are currently alive, Maria is more than likely the key. By that I mean, probably at some point during the night, maybe while she was asleep, maybe in a dream, maybe while in the Rose Garden, while the typhoon was here, Beatrice came up to her and asked her a question. Who should die tonight? And Maria probably said, my mom, Golda, Rudolph, Kirie, Klaus, and Natsuhi. Because Uncle Hideyoshi was kind of nice to her, and Aunt Ava didn't really, like, she was kind of skeptical, right? But she wasn't really mean to her. Can't think of why Kirie would have died, but maybe she was just chosen. And because Natsuhi was supposed to die, and wasn't killed, Shannon instead took her place. So I'm pretty sure that the key, Maria, chose those 6. Or 5, and then one had to be kind of, dragged along just in case. Because Beatrice was probably like, well, there's still a couple alive, why not? I'll leave Ava and Hideyoshi. I'll take the other one. Because if you think about this carefully, right? Just once more. On the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. Someone chooses 6 people, those 6 people die. And this is the most important part for right now. On the second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the 2 who are close. Currently, who remains of the characters that are close? In other words, who will be accused of this murder? Those who have the most to gain. Ava and Hideyoshi. They will be torn apart. Whether that means kill is one thing. Whether it means accused, insulted, separated is another. but we know who's disappearing on the second twilight. On the third twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. That being Beatrice. That's something to keep in the back of your mind. Because again, this is Ryukishi's writing. Sometimes, and this happened during the Higurashi playthrough, when we were going through it, I was very, like, spot on regarding a lot of things. But while going through it, I didn't feel that way. I did not feel that way at all, because in my head, I'm like, well, anyone can reach this conclusion. Right? Anyone can think of this. For all I know, I'm completely wrong right now. For all I know, right now, it's gonna be, I don't fucking know. Who the fuck would it be? Like Golda and Kumasawa or something. Or Golda and Kanon. Sorry, Genji and Kanon, and I meant Genji and Kumasawa. For all we know, it's them too. They will be, quote-unquote, separated. Right? The two who are close. It doesn't necessarily say lovers. But it's two who are close. Technically, they are close, right? Like master and mentor, Sorry, student and mentor, right? And that's currently what their relationship is like. For all we know, maybe they did it, and they accuse them of doing so, right? So if we go by the layers, right? Oh, it's one of these servants. But that doesn't make much sense. Who's got more to gain? It's them two. But two who are close are going to be separated. So it's got to be them, right? But what if that's the red herring and it's these two? What if it's these two? What if it's these two? Technically, Battler hasn't seen his cousins in a while, so he's like an outlier. But these two are relatively close, as far as we know. It could be Jessica and her mom, who are blood related. They're not really close, right? But realistically speaking, it's either going to be them two or them two. So again, these are things to think about. Like, there's branching paths, and all of them lead to dead ends except for one of them, which then leads to another branching path. So this is something to keep in the back of your mind. Again, sorry for like dragging this on for about 20 minutes. Well, it's been like 10 minutes of just me rambling about what's going on and what could possibly be happening.
遺産は兄弟の数で分割する。でも今や4兄弟は私一人。後宮家の全財産は全て私のものになるの。
秀吉おじさんが聞いたら、予算か言えばシャレにならんっていうところっすね。
Right, rambling is of course part of the Umineko, and well, it's part of the Ryukishi experience when you're reading one of his novels. It's normal to do this. Mind you, these are all thoughts that have been going through my head the entire playthrough, but I try not to bring them up unless it's relevant. So right now we're kind of at that position, or at that part where it's like, yeah, I should probably mention it.
ごめんね。どう取り繕ったってどうせ疑われるだろうからふざけただけよ。だからこの殺人は私の立場から見れば私を疑わせるためのものではないかと思ってるの。困ったことに昨べのアリバイは弱いわ。
Right. And what she just said is very important. This murder might have been designed to cast suspicion on me. Because remember, right now, like, if you go through the stages of grief, right, there's like denial and so on and so forth, eventually you get to acceptance. Battler is currently at acceptance. So is Ava, and so is Hideyoshi, right? But the others, like, George is still fucking crying about his fiancé dying. Right? The moment they snap out of it, and they start thinking about this for more than like 5 minutes with a clear head, all of them, I guarantee, will turn on Ava and Hideyoshi. And that's what Ryukishi wants us to kind of start thinking about.
聞かせてもらってもいいっすか？昨べのことを。
バトラ君たちも知っている通り、 兄弟が遺産をどう食いちぎり合うかという話し合いは深夜まで続いたわ。でも何時まで続いたかは知らない。私と主人は朝が早かったからね。もう眠くて24時を過ぎたあたりで抜けさせてもらったの。そしてゲストハウスに戻って休んだわ。
Hold it! Returned to the guest house and rested there? But you woke up in the mansion. God, imagine if this was Ace Attorney.
それを秀吉おじさん以外の誰かに証明できるっすか？
If it was Ace Attorney, the story would be a lot more weak or poorly written.
いやいや、別にエヴァおばさんを疑ってるわけじゃないっすよ。
Not to shit on Ace Attorney, right? But Ace Attorney is usually like, here's Surface 1, here's Surface 2, here's the item that reveals Surface 3, and this is the thing that's going on. Higurashi and Umineko are like, here's Surface 1, here's Surface 2, here's Surface 2 sub-level 1, sub-level 3, and sub-level 4. Or 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then here's layer 3. And then layer 4. And then layer 4 has 5 subsections. And then you have layer 5. And then you have layer 6. And so on. Yeah. Yeah, no, my point regarding Ace Attorney is that it's not as deep as this.
あら、どうだか。
They're still very good and very fun, but they're not 8 chapters. Like one trial does not last 8 chapters. Like by the time you finish like Umineko chapter 1, you're done with like one whole game of Ace Attorney that has like 5 or 6 cases in it.
証明になるかわからないけれど、ゲストハウスに戻ってきた時、源氏さんに出迎えを受けてタオルはいるかと聞かれたわ。
Actually, one sec. Yeah, okay. I had to reread that for a
だ
sec.
から私たちがゲストハウスに戻ってきた時間は24時過ぎだと証明してくれると思うわよ。もっとも、私の仮説通り、使用人たちもグルなのだとしたら、こんなのアリバイにならないけどね。
Each Umineko episode is roughly the same word count as a Lord of the Rings novel, on average. That is crazy. The other day I was thinking about that, because I was watching a VOD, and the streamer was like, that's true, how many books have you read? How many books did you read last year? And I was like, huh, I didn't really read any books, did I? But then I thought about it for a moment, I'm like, no, wait. I read fucking 8 Higurashi novels last year. I read 6 or so. And also all of Super Robot Wars 1, OG 1 and 2. So I read a lot. Like, I voice acted almost the entirety of Super Robot Wars OG 1 and 2. Holy shit, my throat just ached the moment I thought about that. So, I mean, I've been reading a fuck ton. And if this is that long, holy shit. And they get longer. Like, after Umineko, we gotta get to Kikonia.
確かにそうっすね。ってことは、俺、今、真犯人と推理ごっこをしてるってことになるんすか？
でも私の名誉のために言わせてもらうけど、遺産目当てだったなら、こんな変な殺人はしないわよ。だって、遺産相続権を喪失させるだけなら、どんな死に方だって構わない。むしろ事故死に見せかけた方がスマートでしょ？使用人たちを抱き込んで周到に計画していたなら、なおさらそうするでしょうよ。
確かに、そうっすね。営利で人を殺すなら、それは常に殺人に見せるべきではない。
そういうことよ。だからおばさんは、今からとてもブルーな気持ちなわけ。警察には黒幕扱いされて散々調べられるでしょうね。 やだやだ。
Right, and that's also a very important point. Like, why would they kill the victims and put it in such a location when they're on a fucking island? They could have dragged the corpses off to, I don't know, one of the sides of the island. Throw them. There's like a shrine, I believe. Oh, actually, I almost forgot about that. Remember how when they were on the boat, lightning struck or something? It struck one part of the island. Something flashed and almost appeared to be landing on the island. Oh man, I didn't really think about that. But what if that was Beatrice visiting the island? But more realistically, right? We know they have high points. We know there's like areas that lead to cliffs below. Why would they not just throw the corpses there, for example? Why would they not bury the corpses in the middle of the forest where no one will fucking find them? There's no wildlife in this island besides fish in the ocean and birds, like seagulls, right? And seagulls are not they're not buzzards, so they're not gonna be circling around like where a corpse is buried, unless that happens in chapter 2 or 3 or 4. For all I know, I'm like getting way ahead of myself. But you get my point. Yeah. Like we know that's like that was the goal of the culprit. I'm still I'm still going off of, trying to fulfill the prophecy. Like that's my line of reasoning. The plaque like riddle is being solved as we speak. But the thing is, this isn't how to word it. The family is not the witness, or is not, the family are not who should be witnessing, or the family are not the intended audience for these murders. It's someone else. So imagine you have a boss that has, a clipboard with your activities, like what you're supposed to do for work. So, I don't know, you've got like 5 things to do. The first one's like sweeping the floor or some shit in front of the store. So you go do it, you come back, you're like, hey boss, I just finished sweeping. And what does your boss do? They grab their pen. Check. Alright, you swept. Hey, go organize the back. Who would the boss in this case be? And what would a check mark look like? In other words, it would be Beatrice, and the check mark, or the symbol of recognition, or the symbol of acknowledgement, would be what I assume to be her sigil. That little red mark with the iron cross in the middle. Or a cross in the middle. It's not really the iron cross, right? I assume that's what's happened. So it's just someone letting Beatrice know, hey, by the way, it's been done. Here you go. And she's like, hey, good job. First checkpoint or first checkbox has been ticked, right? Now we need to make sure that those who are close are torn apart. Aunt Ava shrugged with a bitter smile. It was just as easy to suspect Aunt Ava as it was to suspect the servants. So if we spin the chessboard around, does that make it impossible for the culprit to be her, suspicious as she is? However, if that sort of argument always works, then motive can never help us in any way. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive must give us powerful clues towards knowing the culprit. That's why murderers from all time periods disguise crimes in complicated ways, cleverly preventing their motives from being discovered. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Every time I spin the chessboard around, it keeps flipping from front to back to front, from my thoughts bringing me closer to the truth? Or are they... Aunt Ava didn't want to talk any more than that, so I folded my arms and headed to the window to cool my head a little. As I looked over the parlor, I saw George and the others talking. It looked like they were talking about the magic circle that had been painted onto the shutter. Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that time. He started drawing the shape in the margins of Maria's notebook. I see. Since Maria was second only to grandfather in knowledge of the occult, she might understand what it meant.
多分こんな感じだったと思うで。十字架をアレンジしたみたいなマークが書かれとったんや。そしてこんな感じで外周の円を取り囲むように妙な文字がびっしり書き込まれていて、十字架の上下左右の辺とその四隅にも何か書かれていたんや。アルファベットとかそういうのとちゃうで。あれはよく言う古代文字とかいうやつや。
あと円周部の頂点に小さな丸を5つ十字状に並べ、それぞれを直線で結んだようなマークでした。
ああ、確かにそんなのも書いてあったで。図形的には間違いなくこれや。細かい文字はわからんが、配列はほぼ同じや。
Everyone was staring down at the shape, so I stared down at it too. There we go. It's a little better. I was about to look this up, but I'm like, wait, I shouldn't do that. From what I'd heard, this had been painted on the shutter to the storehouse with some kind of material that looked like blood. Now, where are the 5 circles they mentioned that looked like a cross? Or maybe I misread it. Let me just quickly go back a sec. 5 small circles arranged in a plus sign and strange lines connecting them. Oh, wait. Do they mean... 1, 2... No. I thought maybe, like, the corners of the cross, or like, you know, the side, because there's 8 sides to this cross, right? 2 on the top, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and 2 on the bottom. I thought maybe that's what they meant, but I'm like, wait, no, that doesn't make any fucking sense. This image is just so fucking dark. I can't even. Well, I mean, it's you know, that's how it's shown to us. But I wonder if we can decipher at least what the letters say. If we can, would it be? Let me see. Let's take a look. I'm double checking just to see if like if I can find any of these similar circles. No, I'm not looking at the Umineko wiki. I'm looking specifically at the like the Key of Solomon. Let me check another source. Because like the most common one that I'm seeing, or the one that pops up a lot, is well, there's 2 of them. The 7th magic circle of the sun. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and then like the 4th or 5th image is like from the Umineko wiki, but it's the image that we're looking at right now. So I'm not gonna look at that. But I'll try to get a like a largish image. Here we go. No, this ain't it. Okay, I'll try to grab this one. This image is so fucking small. But I love how it's like 07th wiki is like one of the one of the search results. So here we go. So this is what we're looking at right now. This should cover it just about. Yeah. So let's see. Let me try this real quick. I know I'm rambling, I know I'm like being boring right now, but I am trying to look things up. And it's a little bit hard because the first results are the 07th wiki and I'm trying to fucking ignore them. So let's see. So the words on this include the names of the 4 highest angels and the 4 rulers of the elements, along with quotations from Psalms 116:16-17, which states, "Thou hast broken my bonds in sunder. I will offer unto thee the sacrifice of thanksgiving, and will call upon the name of the Lord." Yeah. Yeah, Kasan, Ariel, Orkla, and Talihand. Yeah, and then Ariel, Seraph, Thrashis, and Kerub. Interesting. It's intended to enhance the pentacle's spiritual power and effectiveness in magical practices. Yes. Yeah, it could be, again, like Beatrice's chains being broken. Because again, she's supposed to be revived. That's why, like, if we read the line again, "Thou hast broken my bonds in sunder." So you have broken my chains. "I will then give you the sacrifice of thanksgiving." Now, they don't mean, like, literally the holiday. They mean, like, the word itself, which is literally just, like, the act of giving thanks, but mainly to God. But that's basically what it is. So I will, so thank you for breaking, or you have broken my bonds or my chains. I will then offer you my thanks and call upon the name of the Lord. Now, this could be literally God. This could be anyone that it might be someone that Beatrice considers to have, or considers someone to be of a higher authority. Or in this case, it would be if I quickly just look through the tips again. To be left alive on the 10th twilight, the journey's end. You shall attain the power to the Golden Land's treasure once and for the last time. So it could be maybe the ruler of the Golden Land. Just check one final thing. Just in case. Let me quickly look up what Psalm 116 and 116 and 16-7 is. Unless that's literally the line. Okay, so Psalms 16 through 17. "Truly I am your servant, Lord. I serve you just as my mother did. You have freed me from my chains. I will sacrifice a thank offering to you and call on the name of the Lord. So yeah, it's the exact same line that we just read a bit ago. Interesting. This is just a random translation, so it's whatever. I'm sure if I find, I don't know, what's the Old Testament version or whatever. I'm pretty sure it'll be like something different. God, there's so many fucking versions of this shit. God. Let's see this one. One sec. Don't. 16. No. Okay. I'm gonna stop looking too much into this. I am now rambling. But yeah. Those are the most common translations. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct. Interesting. I'm gonna try to see one last thing here. Stop showing me the 07th wiki. Stop showing me that. One sec. I think OBS is being I don't know if actually am I still live? I should be. Here, you know what? One quick way to check would be to do this. I'm gonna remove the circle from the screen. And if that goes away on the preview, then we're still connected. Alright, we're still in there. I just want to very quickly do this. It's a quick thing. Because technically, you should be doing this as well. As someone, if you're playing this. You would technically be doing this as well. Here we go. So let me get the circle up on screen one last time. And then I will now just read to you what it says, which is this. So if we... Oh. Alright. So what this says is... Compediretur mihi, or mi vincula, mea et vindico nomen Domini. Invocato. Should be the last part, right? Oh wait, sorry. It's yeah, no. That should be correct. Even though actually no, that says dirupisti. Vinicula mea. Actually, I could read it like this, maybe. Hold on. No. Jeez. OBS is a pain in the ass to work with. There we go. Yeah. So, dipuristi vinicula mea divi sanctificado sostiam laudis et nomen Domini invocado. Huh. But yeah. It's basically what we've discussed so far. The whole breaking of the chains, blah 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 blah. But that says like your name invoked and so on and so forth. Anyway, moving on from the Lesser Key of Solomon back to this. And thanks for letting me know which it was, Billy. I appreciate it. So now we're a little bit more familiar as to what's in front of this. or what's in front of us. I see. The shirt is unsettling.
こんなわけのわかんねえもんを書きたがるのはじいさまだけだろ。まったくどこに行っちまったんだ。とっ捕まえて意味を聞き出してやりたいぜ。
The other thing is, though, now that we know what it means, right? Like, hey, your chains are broken. This kind of changes it from Beatrice doing this, Beatrice being the one who puts the sigil up, to it being someone else who wants Beatrice to see this. In other words, you sweep the front of the store, your supervisor checks it, and they're showing their boss, to use a metaphor. Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say grandfather was the culprit, but she seemed sure that grandfather knew something about the culprit's background. Of course, if you were searching for a link connecting the Yoshinomiya family to the occult, 10 out of 10 people would think of grandfather. Also, to a person who knew nothing of the occult, this strange mark would have no meaning, which meant that this might have been something addressed to grandfather. That's right. And the reason the crime was shown to the survivors was so they'd find this. In that case, where had grandfather, the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
こんな図形に何か心当たりはあるかい？
Look at these uneducated buffoons. Of course, we all know it's the seventh magic circle of the sun. From the Lesser Key of Solomon. I mean, any learned scholar would know this. And Maria's like, Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic because this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the events at hand. As though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around as though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's corpse.
僕の第一印象ではどこか外国の十字章に似たデザインだなって思ったかな。
ああ、確かにこんなデザインや。ということはどこぞの国と何か関係があるんか？
その国の十字章はもともと聖地巡礼者を守るための騎士修道士たちの紋章だったそうですな。
Would this be Knights Templar? Let me see. I'm sure they have a cross of some kind. Yes, actually. As a matter of fact, it is very spot on. So, assuming it is the Knights Templar, the cross is literally the thing in the middle of the screen. Like, well, I mean, I'll put it up on screen again. It looks like this. Like, that's one of the examples of the Knights Templar crosses. So there you go. Let me remove it. There we go. Interesting. Now, for those of you who are a little bit more familiar, I guess, with the occult, the Knights Templar were supposed to be a like an order of religious knights, right? Like Christian knights. But at some point during, well, the year 1000, right? Like they were active the year 1100 or so. Let's just say the early thousands, as weird as that might sound. Eventually, at some point, they stopped doing the Christianity thing, and they started worshipping Baphomet, or they started praying to Baphomet, who is, if you were born in the 80s, or around in the 80s, the devil. But if you are anyone that's looked into the occult, it has nothing to do with it. I mean, I guess we can put up a picture of Baphomet, right? So Baphomet is just a very ancient figure, and you all know what Baphomet looks like. So here. This is like the very classic image of Baphomet. It looks like this. Goat's head. And then bottom half, like there's so much imagery with this, with what Baphomet is, right? But if we go with maybe this one might be a little bit more direct. Here. Let's see. Yeah. So Baphomet was an idol commonly worshipped by the Knights Templar. It's got the head of a goat, and this figure later became the idol of worship for witches as well. Right? So that's generally like what Baphomet is known to be. What else do we have? He's known, or it's known as the Sabbatic Goat. His name is believed to be a corruption of Muhammad, the founder of Islam. He's usually depicted with the head of a goat, a pentagram carved within between its horns, and the body of a human, woman, or a hermaphrodite. Has the power to control all human women, and is said to give witches their power, thus famously known as the demon worshipped by witches. The Knights Templar, heroes of the Crusades, were accused of worshipping Baphomet by a church inquisition and branded as heretics. To keep them silent, the head of the Templars and another senior leader were sentenced to be burned alive. However, it was later revealed that this was orchestrated by King Philip IV of France, who coveted the Templars' wealth. So, that's something to keep in the back of your mind. An idol worshipped by witches? And, you know? Ooh. Anyway, back to this. So, like, the moment they mentioned a religious order of knights, I'm like, okay, it's Knights Templar. It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
つまりこの魔法陣には宗教的な意味があるってことかよ。ますますにちんぷんかんぷんだぜ。
It's starting to sound like gibberish. When I looked over at all of them, preparing to jump into the discussion, something shocked me. Maria was smiling, an eerie and incomprehensible expression on her face. Here she is, with a fisheye lens, no less. That's a very good art piece. Like, the perspective on this piece is very good. Maria looks way different here, though. Also, aren't her eyes... I guess they kind of are bluish. Yeah, so I guess purple is more accurate. Anyway. It was almost as if she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression I wouldn't have dreamed to find on Maria's face. Oh. And she laughed. I'm sorry, who is that in your eye? Or eyes? What's that figure? Right here. What was that supposed to be? We see shoulders. We see a neck. We see the outline of a face. We see what's possibly hair pulled up. Perhaps a hat. Yeah, what if it's Battler? Who could it be? Yonder I wonder. That eerie, jarring laugh was something I didn't want to believe was possible, even though I was looking at it right in front of my eyes. That was really fucking creepy. That shift, holy fuck. That is a genuinely unsettling face.
全然違うよみんなこんなの見てわかんないかな
While everyone was busy being scared out of their wits, Maria kept on cackling happily by herself. After a while, that laugh was suddenly and abruptly cut off, but her expression still looked like it belonged to someone completely different from Maria.
これは太陽の7の魔法陣だよ書かれてる文字はヘブライ語貸して
Now, what surprises me more, out of all of this, is not what Maria just did, the face that she made, or how smug she's being. It's that Uncle Hideyoshi somehow was able to remember the writing on the circle itself and was able to perfectly copy it down onto a piece of paper. Now you, who are listening to me speak right now, we saw the circle. I had it up on screen for like 15 minutes. Gun to your head right now. Draw it perfectly from memory. Gun to your fucking head, it's right next to your frontal lobe. Can you do it or do you die this second? Hideyoshi saw this circle last night. Or sorry, not last night, like 40 minutes ago. Let's say an hour. I think it's been more than an hour. And he was able to draw the circle to a point where Maria could read the Hebrew. That's what shocks me the most. Not only that, she also just mentioned what it is, the 7th magic circle of the sun. She then started drawing another magic circle with a rustle right next to the one Hideyoshi had drawn.
ね
Just double checking one quick thing. Okay, OBS didn't crash yet.
こんな図形だったんじゃないかな
そんな図形だった
Okay, never mind. So he drew. Okay, so Hideyoshi did not like draw it out perfectly. He just probably did the cross, the circle, and then some scribbles, and then Maria's like, it looks like this.
マリア、すごいな。
Oh.
さすが詳しいぜ。
Sugoi instead of Suget. Okay, Jessica tried to smooth things over by praising Maria. Maybe she wanted to confirm that this was still the Maria we knew so well. But Maria didn't answer her in any way in particular. Yeah, I was about to say, we got the fucking Disgaea music back. It's Halloween core all over again. Maria began swiftly writing unfamiliar characters in the corners of the shape. When Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo saw them, their eyes immediately began to open wide.
天地と左右に書かれているのは風化水道を司る天使たちの名
So literally everything that I just did is about to be explained. Everything that I just explained is about to be, you know, force-fed to us, basically.
カサン、アレル、フォルラク、そしてタリアハドそして斜め四方には4代の王たちの名アリエル、セラフ、タルシス、ケルブ
Hold on. Okay. I think they mean, I don't think they mean like literal kings, because sometimes that does happen in a lot of these ancient esoteric writings or symbols. You will have the names of like just ancient kings that existed, but here they mean like the literal angels being quote-unquote kings. Anyway,
合ってる
even if they hadn't been able to correctly write what they'd seen, when they were once again shown something identical, it wasn't difficult for them to realize the two were the same. When Maria asked them whether it matched, Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo nodded over and over again.
間違いない。そうや。確かにこんな文字が書かれとった。なんでこんなん書けるんや。
あと演習部にも文字が書かれておりましたな。
わかってるよ。こうでしょ。
It's like, God, I gotta write all the Latin for you all too? Maria quickly began to surround the circumference with more Hebrew writing. Latin writing.
旧約聖書の詩編第116編の16節と17節だよ。聖書くらい読んでなきゃ。
She's acting like a Redditor. She is literally talking like a Redditor. Come on, it's the Psalms of the Old Testament. The 16th and 17th verses of the 116th Psalm. You must have at least read the Bible, right? Give me my Reddit gold. For a while, everyone including me was at a loss for words. Actually, did I read the last bit? Yeah, as acting as though knowing this was only common sense, Maria laughed. For a while, everyone including me was at a loss for words. A little later, George Aniki returned to his senses and slowly managed to speak.
すごいね。驚いたよ。それで、この魔法陣にはどんな意味があるんだい？
太陽の力を借りる魔法陣だよ。黄金で描き、護符にして身につけたる者はいかなる牢獄であろうとも、束縛から逃れ、自由を得られる力を授けられる。
Give me 1 second. Try to remember. I haven't thought about King Solomon in ages. No, he was in Israel, not Egypt. Which, I mean, I get it, but I thought for some reason I was confusing it with Egypt, possibly. Where by sun here they mean like literally like Ra, for example. He who wears it as a talisman, drawn in gold, shall be able to break free from the bonds of any prison and receive the power to gain freedom. Interesting.
束縛から逃れ自由を得られる意味深だぜ。
この束縛という意味は何も肉体的なものだけを指さないと解釈されている。だから縛られて牢屋にいる人ばかりに意味があるわけじゃないよ。しがらみや逃れぬ運命など精神的な束縛からの解放も意味してるんだよ。
Such as no longer being employed as the alchemist of a certain family.
しがらみや逃れ得ぬ運命か。これまた意味深だな。
しかしさっぱりわからん。
But what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean?
それとあの6人の遺体とどんな関係があるっちゅうんや。束縛からの解放どころか殺された上に倉庫に閉じ込められてたんやで。
別にその6人のために魔法陣のために6人はそこにいるんでしょ。
Right.
お気の毒だよ。
どういう意味だい？魔法陣のために6人がいるってのは一体。
Maria lifted up her pointer finger and waggled it as if she were making fun of us.
それは演習部に書いてるよ。読めないかな。詩編第116編16節と17節。
Genji, fetch the Bible for me, please.
読んであげるよ。主は私の枷を解かれました。私はあなたに感謝の生贄を捧げ、主の皆を呼ぶでしょう。
ねって、何を言ってるのかさっぱりだぜ。
生贄だってのか。
If what Maria had just read aloud was a vital part of the magic circle, then it was saying that sacrifices had to be offered in order for this magic circle to be effective. So, human sacrifices had been offered inside the storehouse, where the magic circle had been drawn. A heartbeat later, everyone else seemed to reach the same conclusion. The hamster wheels are spinning. They are on overdrive. Some people were shocked, and others spat out that this was insane as they punched their knees. This was starting to get incredibly disturbing, and we couldn't accept it or understand it. I don't care what kind of magic circles or curses other people believe in. I won't pick a fight with them. But did they really kill Dad and the rest as sacrifices for crap like that? Just couldn't stand the feeling. Compared to this, I preferred it when we were still disgusted by that theory about fighting over the inheritance. As I started getting pissed off with a feeling between anger and sadness, I broke from the circle everyone was in and returned again to the window. Something had gone insane since yesterday. There was that letter from the witch Beatrice that Maria read aloud at last night's dinner. Ever since that point, it feels like this whole mansion and this whole island have been getting more and more firmly locked inside some kind of bizarre world. The Golden Land. That's right. When I think back on that letter, that letter was an invitation from the witch. The ruler of the nighttime island had invited us inhabitants of the day into another world. The phone and the radio had been interrupted and the island was shut off by the typhoon. So you really could call this place another world cut off from the real one by now. Just like how Kinzo said this exact same thing a bit ago. Or last chapter. Yeah. As this island is now, it's perfectly normal for a witch to send us letters and for human sacrifices to be offered up for the sake of magic circles. So what will happen next? Will some weird people wearing goat masks start doing the Bon Festival dance or something? It's hopeless. I don't get it. The inside of my head's all screwed up and I don't even know what to think. Anger, sadness, the opposing emotions all swirled up together and they started to suck me in. Unable to resist, I could do nothing but cover my eyes with my hands and trust my mind and body as I started getting sucked in. As I started losing heart, I began to recall a memory from when I was small. It was from when I was very young. I had unfortunately seen a scary occult movie on TV, and for a while I hadn't even been able to go to the bathroom by myself. That old bastard gave me an exaggerated laugh and said this.
なあバトラ、どうして悪魔だのオカルトだのってのをわざわざこうして映画にすると思う？ねえからだよ。ねえからわざわざ見たくて作るんだよ。だから俺はオカルト映画なんてちゃんちゃらおかしくて笑っちまうってんだ。
That's why those occult movies just make me laugh.
俺に言わせりゃ、悪魔やら妖怪やらより、今年度の収支報告や機嫌を悪くした女房の方が1億倍も怖えってもんだぜ。さらに言うぜ。俺、怖がるってのは、心と生活にゆとりのある連中の娯楽的感情なのさ。暇でしょうがないから。連中は変わった感情で心を遊ばせたくて、悪魔だの、オカルトだのって文化を作り出したんだよ。
Interesting. Seriously, why have I been acting so damn thick-headed? I was totally taken in. Try to mess with me. This is the human world. don't give a damn about witches, demons, magic circles, and sacrifices. The human who killed Dad and everyone else is still on this island. That's all there is to it. Right? The next person who started speaking to my heart was Kiria.
チェスや将棋ってね、終盤の終盤、詰めの最後の段階に入れば入るほど最善手は限られてくるのよ。だから自分が追い詰めている、あるいは追い詰められているというその時、両者の手は限りなく読みやすくなるのよ。つまり完全に追い詰められて打つ手なしって思ったその時こそ最も読みやすい瞬間なのよ。でも守勢に立った人間はどうしても考えが固くなって相手の手を読むことにまで考えが至らない。そういう時はね、チェス盤をひっくり返すの。
With all my strength, I slapped my face with both hands. Now, my eyes were truly open. When you don't understand anything, and you're completely cornered just like I am now, isn't that the perfect time to spin the chessboard around? While on the defensive, we can't even guess at the culprit's scheme. If we spin it around and look at it that way, just what might we see? First off, at the time the culprit committed the murders, they knew the island was being cut off by the typhoon. Therefore, they should have understood that even if they carried out the murders, they wouldn't be able to get away early the next morning. In short, the culprit had begun without securing a way to escape. Furthermore, that bastard tossed the corpses in the storehouse. Then, was even kind enough to say, here they are, with that weird bit of graffiti. In other words, since we'd probably find the corpses sooner or later, they wanted to show them to us. If we'd all been dim, and hadn't noticed the storage shed, the culprit's goal would have not been achieved, would it? If you think about it this way, that bastard of a culprit. Since this morning, they must have been watching our every move with bated breath. After all, if we hadn't been so kind as to discover what was on the storehouse, all of that hard work and preparation they did last night would have just gone poof. What did the culprit want to make us feel by showing us the corpses in the storehouse? All 6 of the bodies had their faces noticeably destroyed. Was it a grudge? A warning? The defacement of the bodies had occurred after death, so it hadn't been the means by which the culprit had killed. It didn't mean anything to those who had been killed. It did have meaning to those who found the bodies, quote unquote. The culprit wanted to make it appear that they had been killed so brutally. After thinking this way, I really want to tell that bastard to stop taking me so lightly. We'd just dance to that tune. If you're told, please be scared, you can't just say, really? Sure thing. When someone tells the great Ushinomiya battler, the entrance is right here, I'm the kind of guy who'll start wanting to sneak in through the window. The next thing that had me concerned was that so-called magic circle on the shutter, as Maria, who had shown that her knowledge of the occult rivaled grandfather's, had recognized that magic circle was genuine. They must have drawn that thing in pitch black darkness, taking a lot of time and holding an umbrella in one hand. Isn't that amount of hard work, and perfectionism impressive? What purpose would have been worth all that effort? If we were looking for a fan of the occult in this mansion, most likely all of us would naturally suspect Grandfather. Did they want to make us think Grandfather was involved? But if that's all they wanted, they could have just drawn any old scribble that looked like a magic circle. It wasn't like any of us amateurs would be able to tell the difference between genuine and fake. However, this magic circle was genuine, and furthermore, it had even been written in Hebrew. So this magic circle had a message that could only be understood by someone with knowledge of the occult. A message is a form of communication. By sending it, they were hoping for a reaction. Reaction? For some reason, we couldn't find Grandfather now. I don't know how Grandfather might have spotted the magic circle on the shutter, but did he choose to hide himself in reaction to that? No. Was it a trap to make us suspect that Grandfather had participated? You could read it either way. Damn, that's annoying. What kind of reaction was the culprit hoping to get out of us by putting on this occult show? Somehow, that felt like the culprit's weak point. The letter from Beatrice that Maria had read aloud during the last night's dinner sprang back into my mind. This was a freak who'd ask us to enjoy a battle of wits. Isn't that interesting? This is a battle of wits between us and the witch. Will we be sucked up by her occult game first? Or will we pull off her fake skin first? There's a whole day until the typhoon passes. Why not enjoy ourselves? I finally noticed that the inside of the parlor had gone quiet again. Everyone had sunk into their favorite sofas, some deep in thought, some irritated, some acting depressed. Maria was once again enjoying the TV as if she'd never left it. It looked like she found the commercials more fun than the boring program, and she happily yelled ooh and giggled. I stared at each person's appearance in turn. If there isn't a 19th person, the culprit must be in this room. Right now, Aunt Natsuhi's searching the mansion. Aunt Natsuhi's searching the mansion with the servants, right? Then we shouldn't say in this room. In this mansion is where the culprit has to be. Or on this island. After all, it's possible Aunt Natsuhi was behind this. And we still can't deny that one of the servants might be the killer. Anyone could be guilty. Still, Aunt Natsuhi and the rest are sure are taking their time. Of course, it's not a small mansion, but isn't this taking a little too long just to walk around checking the windows and doors? Just as I was thinking this, Aunt Natsuhi and the rest returned. Not one of them was missing, but our relief was short-lived. Everyone looked at Aunt Natsuhi in shock. The talk I'd had with Aunt Ava started to creep back into my mind. The possibility that the culprits had enough in numbers or weapons to kill all of those 6 at once.
驚かせてしまいましたね。
Aunt Natsuhi? Why do you have a sawed-off shotgun with you? Or not sawed-off, this is just a short barrel shotgun. Why do you have that with you?
万が一に備えて持ってきたものです。
After all, that thing in Aunt Natsuhi's hand was a rifle. At a glance, its silhouette looked like a hunting gun, but it was unusually short and kinda looked like a kid-sized weapon. However, it had a weightness to it that made it clear it was no kid's toy. Or no kid's toy.
金蔵さんの銃ですな。
ご存知でしたか？
Her smiling while holding a fucking shotgun?
そうです。お父様の古いコレクションの中にあったことを思い出し、探し出してきました。
ひゅー、すっげえ。夏日おばさん、それ本物なんすか？
ええ、本物です。実弾を発砲できますよ。昔お父様は野鳥を追い払うのに使ったりしていました。
The fuck do you mean by that? Like, realistically, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? What the fuck is this sentence supposed to mean? Long ago, Father used it to scare away wild birds. What do you mean, wild birds? You're on an island, quite a ways away from mainland. Like, from the mainland. It was like, what, 30 minutes or something by boat? Because they were going, you know, not at like an incredibly fast speed because Battler got sick. They were going at cruising speeds. It's 30 minutes by boat. What do you mean wild birds? An albatross? A seagull? A peacock? Somehow? I don't think he was scaring away wild birds. I think he was hunting eldritch abominations, maybe.
あら懐かしい。どこから出てきたんやら。私がいくら触らせてって言っても指一本触れさせてくれなかったやつよ。
へえ、じいさまこんなの持ってたんですか。知らなかったですよ。
I'm kidding about the eldritch abomination things, by the way. I'm pretty sure, like, that has nothing to do with this.
お父様は昔西部劇にどっぷり使ってたことがあってね。あの世代はこういうライフル銃が大好きなのよ。
結構年季の入った銃のようですね。でもこんな短い仕様のは初めて見ました。
ああ、思い出したわ、その銃。懐かしいな。昔好きやった映画のガンマンが派手にぶっ放しとったやつだわ。お父さんも渋いな。
Is this real? Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, it's a TV series. Okay. Interesting. Oh, you're right, it is. Here, this is what it looks like. Put it on screen. It looks like this. I mean, we're seeing it, like we saw it in her hands. But yeah, it looks like this. Neato. So yeah, you can also see the resemblance in the rifles here. How peculiar.
親方様がだいぶ昔にご覧の通り実銃ですので、どうかこの件はご内密にお願いいたします。
手に入れられたばかりの頃は大層気に入られておりまして、撃つより薬莢を出す動作が面白いらしくて、裏の森でいろいろとかっこつけて遊んでおられたもんですよ。
しかし物騒ね。そんなものまで持ち出しちゃうのかしら。
万が一に備えてです。賊はおそらく一人ではないでしょう。しかも主人たちを6人も殺した恐ろしい相手です。私には主人に代わって皆さんを明日まで守る義務がありますので。
As Natsuki said this, she slumped down into one of the sofas and took a deep breath. She had been trying to find grandfather, as well as check the doors and windows. Since grandfather wasn't with her, she probably still didn't know where he was.
屋敷内の戸締まりは厳重に確認してきました。ですが万が一ということもあります。みんななるべくここに一緒にいた方がいいでしょう。
そうね。ここに全員が集まって相互監視をしている方が安心だわ。
それはどういう意味ですか、エヴァさん。
別に夏日姉さんの意見に賛成しただけよ。
There was a stormy atmosphere between the two of them. If you think about who was the most suspicious from the inheritance problem standpoint, Aunt Ava was the obvious answer. However, there was no proof that Aunt Natsuhi was innocent. No. If you view Beatrice's letter as one of grandfather's complicated pranks and think of this crime as just an extension of that, there was more than enough reason to suspect even grandfather. What the fuck do you mean by that? Excuse me? If you view Beatrice's letter as one of Grandfather's complicated pranks, okay, you know, he wrote a letter, he's fucking with us. Grandpa's so funny, isn't he? And think of the crime as just an extension of that goof, an extension of that gag, an extension of that joke. There's more than enough reason to suspect even Grandfather. Grandpa hates us so much, hates that we're arguing so much about the inheritance, that he would go through the trouble of writing a letter, pretending to be a witch, and then casually murder 2 of his fucking servants, his oldest son, his youngest daughter, his middle son, and his wife. Just to keep the gag going. As a goof. As a little joke. It's the opening act to his comedy special. What the fuck kind of family is this? Like, just think about it for a fucking second. Also, Aunt Natsuhi thought the criminal was on the outside, but Aunt Ava thought the criminal was on the inside. In short, it was the question of whether or not a 19th person exists. That same question has been repeated endlessly since last night's dinner, with the letter from the witch who called herself Beatrice. So was the culprit among us? Or not? And did the witch Beatrice exist? Or not? If you assume that something as stupid as a witch can't exist, you're basically saying that none of these relatives here who share a common bloodline is the culprit. If that was too unpleasant, it'd be much more comfortable to simply accept the fairy tale-like character of the witch. A witch? A witch drawing a bizarre magic circle and offering human sacrifices? If I could accept that rubbish, I'd be able to trust all the people in this room. However, damn common sense got in the way. It kept repeating that witches don't exist. In that case, the culprit must be among us. In the middle of the seemingly endless rain, and none of us could break the silence. Of course. It is now 1 o'clock. We're getting closer to the next twilight. So I think this would be a good stopping point for us.